The hum of the engine filled the tense silence of the car. Xia Weiqi stared out the window, the neon lights of the city blurring into streaks of color. Qi Mo's concerned voice grated on her nerves. "Chi-Chi, you've been quiet all evening. Are you feeling unwell?" He reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. She flinched, not from his touch, but from the lingering scent of jasmine on his fingers, a perfume she never wore. Her gaze drifted down to his collar, a faint smear of crimson lipstick, a stark contrast against the crisp white of his shirt. He followed her gaze, his expression shifting from concern to a carefully crafted mask of innocence. "Oh, this," he began, a practiced nonchalance in his voice, "must have been from a client. You know how these things are." "He thinks I'm a fool," she thought, the bitterness a cold knot in her stomach. "He truly believes I'll swallow this flimsy excuse." But instead of the expected outburst, a slow smile curved her lips. "Of course, darling," she replied, her voice deceptively soft. She tilted her head, feigning curiosity as she picked up a compact mirror from her purse, examining her own reflection. "The lipstick mark is not mine," she mused, her voice laced with a detached amusement that made Qi Mo shift uncomfortably in his seat. "And this perfume," she inhaled deeply, a theatrical gesture, "that this intoxicating jasmine. It must be hers." Her smile widened, no longer a mask but a genuine expression of triumph. "I'm laughing at my good luck," she continued, her eyes meeting his in the mirror, meeting the most handsome and nicest man in the world. Qi Mo frowned, his brow furrowing. What is she talking about? This isn't her usual reaction. He tried to decipher the strange glint in her eyes, the unfamiliar confidence that radiated from her. "Chi-Chi, are you feeling all right?" he asked again, his voice laced with a hint of suspicion. "Never better," she replied, her gaze fixed on the passing cityscape. Inside, a storm raged, a tempest of emotions she had suppressed for far too long. Fear, anger, resentment, they swirled within her, a potent cocktail fueled by years of silent suffering. Yet, above all, she felt a sense of liberation, a thrilling anticipation of the life she was about to reclaim. She had meticulously planned this escape, every detail carefully orchestrated. The fake passport, the offshore accounts, the new identity waiting for her on the other side of the world, they were her tickets to freedom. And Qi Mo, blinded by his own arrogance, was playing right into her hands. "Who is this man?" Qi Mo pressed, his voice hardening. He couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. He was used to controlling the narrative, dictating the terms of their relationship. But tonight, the script had gone awry. Chi-Chi's unusual composure unnerved him. "You wouldn't know him," she replied, her voice a whisper lost in the hum of the engine. She closed her eyes, picturing Song Yi's face, his calm demeanor, the quiet strength in his eyes. He was a stark contrast to Qi Mo, a man of substance in a world of shadows. He didn't offer empty promises or lavish gifts, he offered respect, understanding, and a safe harbor from the storm. He was her escape route, her lifeline. He was the man who would help her disappear, the man who would help her build a new life for herself and her children, far away from the gilded cage Qi Mo had built for her. Qi Mo's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The casual dismissal, the veiled secrecy, it fueled his suspicion. "Chi-Chi, I demand to know who you're seeing," he exclaimed, his voice rising in frustration. He couldn't bear the thought of her with another man, a man she seemed to prefer over him. It wasn't just jealousy, it was a blow to his ego, a challenge to his authority. He needed to know, needed to regain control. Xia Weiqi opened her eyes, a flicker of amusement dancing in them. "He's someone who sees me, Qi Mo," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Someone who values me for who I am, not for what I represent." She turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. He sees the woman you've systematically erased over the years, the woman buried beneath the weight of your expectations and your infidelities. Her words struck him like a physical blow. He saw a glimpse of the woman he had married, the vibrant, intelligent woman he had fallen in love with. But that woman was long gone, replaced by a ghost, a shadow of her former self. He had been so focused on his own ambitions, his own desires, that he hadn't noticed the slow erosion of their marriage, the gradual fading of her light. He had taken her for granted, assuming her silence was acceptance, her compliance a sign of contentment. He opened his mouth to speak, to apologize, to promise to change, but the words wouldn't come. He was trapped in a web of his own making, a web of lies and deceit. And Chi-Chi, the woman he thought he possessed, was slipping through his fingers like sand. The realization hit him with the force of a tidal wave, leaving him breathless and disoriented. The car sped on, the city lights a blur outside the window. Inside, two people sat locked in a silent battle, their futures hanging in the balance. One clinging to the remnants of a broken marriage, the other yearning for the promise of a new beginning. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words and unacknowledged truths. The scent of jasmine, a reminder of his betrayal, hung in the air, a silent testament to the unraveling of their lives. The road ahead was uncertain, shrouded in the darkness of the impending night. But for Xie Weiqi, the darkness held a promise, the promise of freedom, of a life reclaimed, of a future finally her own. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm, almost suffocating glow over the banquet hall. Laughter, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the low murmur of polite conversation filled the air. It was a celebration, a testament to 5 years of marital bliss at least, that's what the meticulously crafted facade suggested. I remember the weight of the silk cheongsam against my skin, the slight tightness in my chest as I pasted a smile on my face. Happy anniversary, Chi-Chi, Chi-Mo murmured, his hand resting possessively on my waist. His touch, once a source of comfort, now felt like a brand. 5 years, I thought, the irony twisting in my gut. 5 years of gilded cage. Around us, our guests, business partners, socialites, family raised their glasses in a toast. Chi-Mo's speech, filled with flowery pronouncements of love and devotion, echoed in my ears, each word a sharp shard of hypocrisy. He spoke of our unwavering bond, our shared dreams, while his eyes, I noticed, strayed a little too often towards Ching, a rising star in his company, positioned strategically near the stage. Her demure smile, the subtle tilt of her head as she listened to him, every gesture a calculated performance. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. He thinks he's so clever. The night unfolded in a haze of forced pleasantries and veiled barbs. Each congratulatory remark, each envious glance, felt like a pinprick, deflating the illusion of happiness I had so painstakingly constructed. Later, in the quiet solitude of our bedroom, the mask finally crumbled. I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through a film of unshed tears. Chi-Mo, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't turn, his attention fixed on the news playing silently on the television. Do you remember how we met? He grunted in response, a dismissive sound that pierced through the silence. My mind drifted back to that time, a lifetime ago it seemed, when Chi-Mo had been my savior. I was young, vulnerable, trapped in a web of family debts and despair. He had appeared like a knight in shining armor, offering me a way out, a chance at a new life. I had clung to him, grateful for his protection, blinded by the promise of security and love. He had given me a new name, a new identity, erasing the painful past and painting a bright future. Or so I thought. The memory of his kindness, the genuine affection in his eyes back then, twisted the knife deeper into my heart. When did it change? I wondered, the question a silent scream in the hollow chamber of my chest. Perhaps it was the gradual accumulation of wealth, the intoxicating taste of power. Perhaps it was the insidious nature of ambition, the insatiable hunger for more. Whatever it was, it had eroded the man I once knew, leaving behind a shell filled with ego and indifference. Chi-mo, I tried again, my voice laced with a desperation I couldn't conceal. We need to talk. He finally turned, his expression a mixture of annoyance and impatience. Can't it wait, Chi-chi? I'm tired. His words, though seemingly innocuous, were a clear dismissal, a confirmation of the growing chasm between us. Tired of me, I thought, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. He was tired of the pretense, tired of the charade of a happy marriage. And in that moment, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. The sadness remained, a dull ache in my chest, but it was accompanied by a newfound resolve, a quiet defiance that had been dormant for far too long. I'm tired too, I realized. Tired of the lies, the deceit, the suffocating weight of his expectations. That night, as he slept soundly beside me, I made a decision. A decision that would change the course of my life, a decision that would shatter the carefully constructed illusion of Xia Weiqi, the perfect wife. I would disappear. Not literally, not at first. But I would begin to dismantle the gilded cage, piece by piece, brick by brick. I would reclaim the fragments of myself that I had lost, the strength and independence that had been buried beneath layers of societal expectations and marital constraints. The plan began to form in my mind, a complex tapestry of calculated moves and carefully orchestrated events. I would use his own arrogance against him, his blind faith in his control over me. I would let him believe he had won, while I quietly slipped away, taking my children and my freedom with me. The anniversary party, the grand celebration of our supposed happiness, would become the backdrop for my escape. That day, I whispered to the empty room, a flicker of a smile playing on my lips, that day was my 5th wedding anniversary with Chi-mo invited all friends and partners, let me leave him forever in front of everyone. The first step was to reach out to Song Yi. He was an enigma, a man of power and influence who moved in the shadows. Our paths had crossed briefly years ago, and there was something in his eyes, a quiet understanding, that gave me the courage to trust him. He listened patiently as I laid out my plan, his gaze unwavering, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he simply nodded. I understand, he said, his voice low and steady. I will help you. The weeks that followed were a blur of clandestine meetings, carefully crafted alibis, and the slow, agonizing process of detaching myself from the life I had built. Every interaction with Chi-mo, every forced smile, every carefully chosen word, was a step towards my liberation. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had once saved me from despair had become the very source of my unhappiness. And now, I was orchestrating my own rescue, using the very tools he had provided me. The night of the staged accident, the air was thick with tension. I stood on the precipice of a new life, the fear and excitement churning within me. As the car plunged into the dark waters, I closed my eyes, a single thought echoing in my mind, goodbye, Chi-mo. This is my rebirth. The opulent living room, bathed in the soft glow of strategically placed lamps, held an air of deceptive tranquility. Xia Weiqi sat on a plush velvet sofa, a half-finished cup of jasmine tea cooling on the table beside her. Her posture was impeccable, her face composed, the very picture of a wealthy, contented wife. But beneath the carefully constructed facade, a storm raged. Each slow, deliberate sip of tea was a battle against the tremors that threatened to betray her composure. A discreet knock echoed through the stillness. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. "Come in," she called, her voice steady, even. A man entered, his presence as unobtrusive as a shadow. He held a slim folder, its contents the blueprint of her escape. Mr. Zhang, her aunt's trusted associate, the architect of her new life. Or rather, the architect of her death. Everything is arranged, Madam Chi, he said, his voice low and respectful. His eyes, however, held a flicker of something akin to pity. It was a look she had grown accustomed to, a silent acknowledgement of the gilded cage she inhabited. "Thank you, Mr. Zhang," she replied, her smile a practiced curve on her lips. Internally, a wave of nausea washed over her. This charade, this performance of normalcy, was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Madam Chi. The title felt like a brand, searing her skin with its reminder of everything she was trying to escape. He placed the folder on the table, the gesture precise and economical. "This is your scheduled departure itinerary," he corrected himself smoothly, avoiding the harsh reality of the word death. "All contingencies have been accounted for." Her fingers, long and slender, hovered over the folder. She hesitated, a flicker of doubt momentarily clouding her resolve. Was this truly the only way? The thought of her children, their innocent faces, flashed through her mind. This was for them, she reminded herself fiercely. A life free from the suffocating shadow of Chi Mo's indifference and Ching's venomous ambition. With a deep, steadying breath, she opened the folder. The pages inside detailed her staged demise, a carefully orchestrated accident designed to leave no trace. A phantom pang of grief, absurd and unexpected, pierced through her. She was mourning her own death, a death that was both a lie and a liberation. Mr. Zhang cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. "Love is never something you can rely on, but yourself." His words, though softly spoken, resonated with an unexpected force. They echoed the silent mantra she had been repeating to herself for months, a mantra that had hardened into a steely resolve. "I understand," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. She picked up a pen, its weight surprisingly heavy in her hand. Each stroke of her signature on the document felt like a final severing of ties, a definitive step towards the unknown. He bowed slightly. "Then I wish you a successful new beginning, Madame Weiqi." The deliberate omission of her married name, the subtle emphasis on her given name, was a silent acknowledgement of the woman she was about to become. After he left, the silence of the room pressed in on her. The scent of jasmine, usually a source of comfort, now felt cloying, suffocating. She rose and walked towards the large window overlooking the city, its glittering lights a stark contrast to the darkness within her. A tear traced a path down her cheek, unnoticed in the dim light. She thought of Chi Mo, his face a blur of handsome indifference. Had he ever truly seen her? Had he ever understood the woman beneath the carefully crafted mask of a dutiful wife? Probably not. His world revolved around business deals, social engagements, and the fleeting amusement provided by Ching's calculated charm. He would mourn the loss of his wife, the image, the status symbol. But he wouldn't mourn her. The thought brought a bitter satisfaction. Let him mourn the ghost, she thought, a flicker of defiance igniting within her. The real Xia Weiqi would be elsewhere, reborn, free. She looked out at the cityscape, its vastness a promise of anonymity, of a future unwritten. Fear, a cold knot in her stomach, warred with a burgeoning sense of anticipation. This was it. The point of no return. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The scent of freedom, faint but unmistakable, mingled with the lingering fragrance of jasmine. It was the scent of a new beginning, a life reclaimed. She thought of Song Yi, the enigmatic man who had offered her not just an escape route, but a lifeline. His presence in her life was still a mystery, a puzzle she had yet to decipher. Yet, his quiet strength, his unwavering support, had given her the courage to take this leap of faith. He had seen through her facade, recognized the woman beneath the mask, and offered her a hand out of the darkness. A faint smile touched her lips. This new life, this unknown future, was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She had no illusions about the challenges that lay ahead. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope, a spark of something akin to excitement. She was no longer Xia Weiqi, the wife of Qi Mo, trapped in a gilded cage. She was simply Weiqi, a woman forging her own path, walking towards a future of her own making. The night, vast and infinite, stretched before her, full of possibilities. And she was ready to embrace them all. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pristine white marble floor of her living room, each a distorted echo of the emptiness she felt inside. She ran a hand over the cool, smooth surface of the grand piano, a relic of a life she no longer recognized. The melody that had once filled this house, the laughter of children, the clink of champagne glasses during lavish parties, it was all a facade, a carefully constructed illusion of happiness. Now, only silence remained, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Each tick was a countdown, a small, insistent reminder that her time here was running out. She ascended the grand staircase, the polished wood gleaming beneath her feet, the silence amplifying the sound of her own breathing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Reaching her bedroom, she paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. This room, once a sanctuary shared with a man who had become a stranger, now felt like a prison. Inside, neatly folded on the bed, lay the clothes she would wear for her escape, simple, unremarkable, a stark contrast to the designer gowns that lined her closet. She changed quickly, each movement precise and deliberate, as if shedding not just her clothes, but the skin of the woman she had been forced to become. A fleeting image of Qi Mo flashed through her mind, his sharp, calculating eyes, the way his lips curled into a thin smile when he spoke of business deals and social engagements, never of love, never of her. A wave of nausea washed over her, quickly followed by a surge of fierce determination. This was it. There was no turning back. Her phone vibrated in her hand, a message from Qi Mo, dinner at the club tonight? The Wangs will be there. She typed her reply, her fingers steady despite the turmoil within her. Don't worry, I won't keep your friends waiting for dinner. She hesitated for a moment, her thumb hovering over the send button. Then, with a final, resolute tap, she sent the message, the digital equivalent of a farewell letter. A second message followed almost immediately, good. And bring your umbrella. It's supposed to rain. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. Even in his supposed concern, there was a detached coldness, a lack of genuine warmth. He wouldn't be home tonight. That was the arrangement. The pretense of marriage preserved for public consumption. You bring your umbrella, she murmured, the words echoing the hollowness of their relationship. I won. Your man can't come back tonight. This small victory, this carefully crafted deception, was the first step towards reclaiming her life. She moved through the house, gathering the few precious items she couldn't bear to leave behind: a worn photograph of her children, a small jade pendant her grandmother had given her, a book of poetry she had cherished since childhood. Each object was a tangible link to the past, a reminder of the woman she once was, the woman she hoped to become again. The drive was a blur of city lights and rain-slicked streets. The rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers seemed to mirror the frantic beat of her heart. She glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Qi Mo's car following her, a phantom born of years of living under his watchful eye. But there was nothing there, only the empty road stretching ahead, a dark ribbon leading towards an uncertain future. She pulled over to the side of a deserted road overlooking the churning ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, their roar a symphony of chaos and liberation. This was the place. She had chosen it carefully, a desolate spot far from prying eyes, a place where she could disappear. She took a deep breath, the salty air filling her lungs, a taste of freedom. She stepped out of the car, the rain instantly plastering her clothes to her skin. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the rain wash over her, cleansing her of the past. The plan had been meticulously crafted, each detail carefully considered, each contingency accounted for. She had left a trail of breadcrumbs, a carefully constructed narrative that would lead everyone to believe she had driven off the cliff, a victim of a tragic accident. A flicker of doubt, a cold tendril of fear, snaked its way around her heart. What if something went wrong? What if they saw through her deception? She pushed the thoughts aside, steeling herself against the rising tide of anxiety. There was no room for doubt, no time for second-guessing. This was her only chance. With a heavy heart, but a resolute spirit, she set the plan in motion. She activated the pre-programmed sequence on her phone, a series of automated messages and calls designed to create the illusion of a distressed driver losing control of her vehicle. She placed the phone on the driver's seat, its screen illuminating the empty car. Then, she retreated into the shadows, watching as the car, guided by the automated system, slowly rolled forward, picking up speed as it approached the cliff edge. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the churning waves below. For a moment, the car seemed to hesitate, poised on the precipice, a silent metaphor for the life she was leaving behind. Then, with a final, sickening lurch, it plunged over the edge, disappearing into the darkness. The sound of the crash echoed through the night, a final, dramatic punctuation mark to the end of her old life. She stood there, watching the waves reclaim the wreckage, a sense of profound sadness mingling with the exhilarating rush of freedom. It was over. Xia Weiqi, the wife of Qi Mo, was dead. Now, a new chapter could begin. The air in Qi Mo's office hung thick with the scent of stale coffee and simmering resentment. Sunlight glinted off the cityscape visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a stark contrast to the shadows gathering in Qing's eyes. She stood, a figure of contrived composure, facing Xia Weiqi's aunt, a woman whose grief felt as tangible as the expensive silk scarf clutched in her trembling hands. "I understand your pain," Qing began, her voice a practiced symphony of sympathy, each note meticulously placed. "He'll admire my grace under pressure," she thought, picturing Qi Mo's approving gaze. "He'll see how I handle this, how I'm the strong one." But she wouldn't want this animosity. Animosity? The aunt's voice cracked, raw with genuine sorrow. "You dare speak of animosity when you were the wedge that drove my niece to this?" Her words trailed off, choked by a fresh wave of grief. Qing flinched, not at the accusation, but at the unexpected strength in the older woman's voice. This wasn't the broken, easily manipulated relative she'd anticipated. "I loved Qi Mo," Qing countered, her voice tightening. "And I'll have him, all of him, now that she's gone. Don't think you can keep him by your side by pretending to be sick, by manipulating everyone around you." The words tasted bitter, even to her. "He only loves me now." She directed a pointed look at the family lawyer, a silent participant in this macabre theater. Let them all see who holds the power now." A flicker of something cold and hard flashed in the lawyer's eyes. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Ms. Cheng," he began, his voice devoid of the expected deference. Qing felt a prickle of unease. Something was shifting, the carefully constructed narrative of the grieving mistress crumbling under an unseen pressure. "We have received information," the lawyer continued, his gaze unwavering, "that necessitates a review of Mrs. Xia's passing." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Qing's carefully crafted mask began to crack. "Information? What information?" A cold dread snaked its way through her meticulously constructed composure. On the large screen usually reserved for corporate presentations, news footage flickered to life. It showed grainy security camera footage of Qing meeting with a shadowy figure, their faces obscured, the exchange of a small package barely visible. Another clip showed her entering Xia Weiqi's hospital room, a syringe clutched in her hand. The images, though blurry, were damning. The carefully orchestrated narrative of a tragic accident was dissolving, replaced by the chilling suggestion of something far more sinister. Ching stared at the screen, her mind racing. How could they have known? It was perfect, foolproof. Panic clawed at her throat, choking the carefully rehearsed lies. The room seemed to spin, the faces of Xia Weiqi's family blurring into a single, accusatory mass. This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, her voice thin and reedy. The lawyer's lips curled into a thin, humorless smile. "I assure you, Miss Cheng, it is not." News reports of Xia Weiqi's tragic accident saturated the media, each broadcast laced with increasing suspicion. Public opinion, initially sympathetic to Chi Mo and his supposed grief, began to shift. The image of the grieving husband crumbled under the weight of the emerging evidence, replaced by the portrait of a man blinded by infatuation, a man complicit, perhaps unknowingly, in his wife's demise. Chi Mo, secluded in his private office, watched the reports with a growing sense of unease. He hadn't seen Ching since the incident, her absence explained away by her own overwhelming grief. But now, seeing her face plastered across the news, juxtaposed with grainy images that hinted at a darker truth, doubt began to gnaw at him. He had trusted her, believed her unwavering devotion. Had he been a fool? He thought of Chi, of her quiet strength, her unwavering loyalty. He remembered the subtle sadness that had haunted her eyes in recent months, a sadness he had dismissed as a symptom of her illness. Now, he wondered if that sadness had been a silent scream, a desperate plea for help that he had been too blind to see. The phone rang, shattering the oppressive silence. It was his lawyer, his voice strained. "Mr. Chi, there's been a development. The police have issued a warrant for Miss Cheng's arrest." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Chi Mo closed his eyes, the weight of his own complicity pressing down on him. He had lost Chi, not to a tragic accident, but to his own blindness. And in her place, he had embraced a viper, a woman whose ambition knew no bounds. Meanwhile, far from the storm engulfing Chi Mo and Ching, Xia Weiqi sat on a sun-drenched balcony overlooking the Aegean Sea. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair as she watched her children play on the beach below. A smile touched her lips, a genuine smile, free from the shadows that had haunted her for so long. Beside her, Song Yi watched the scene unfold, his presence a silent promise of protection and a future filled with possibilities. He reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "It's a new beginning, Chi," he murmured, his voice a gentle caress against the sound of the waves. She looked at him, her eyes shining with a newfound strength. "Yes," she whispered, her voice filled with the quiet conviction of a woman reborn. "It is." The Parisian air, crisp and carrying the faint scent of rain-washed cobblestones, swirled around her as she stepped out of the small boulangerie. A warm, crusty baguette nestled in her arm, its yeasty aroma a comforting presence. Xia Weiqi, or rather, the woman she now was, paused, lifting her face to the pale sunlight filtering through the still damp leaves of a nearby plane tree. A faint smile touched her lips, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, a smile that hadn't graced her face in years. It felt foreign, yet strangely familiar, like a forgotten melody suddenly recalled. "Chi, how long has it been since you simply breathed?" She mused, the thought echoing in the vast, quiet space that had become her inner world. Gone was the gnawing anxiety, the ever-present knot of tension in her chest. In its place, a tentative peace, a fragile seedling pushing through the hardened soil of her past. Her apartment, a small but charming space tucked away on a quiet side street, was her sanctuary. The walls, once bare, now held a vibrant collection of her paintings. Bold strokes of color, swirling abstracts, and evocative landscapes, each canvas a testament to her reawakening. Art, Once a stifled whisper in the opulent cage of her marriage, now roared through her veins, a life-giving force. She'd even changed her name. Not a drastic shift, merely a subtle alteration, enough to ensure her anonymity, yet retain a thread of connection to the woman she once was. The thought of Chi-Mo, of Ching, no longer brought the sharp sting of betrayal and despair. It was a dull ache, a phantom limb pain, a reminder of a life she'd shed like an ill-fitting skin. She placed the baguette on the small kitchen counter, her fingers lingering on the warm crust. A childish giggle echoed from the adjacent room, followed by the thump of small feet. Her children. The reason for her charade, her motivation, her everything. They burst into the kitchen, their faces alight with unrestrained joy. Mama! They flung themselves at her, their small arms wrapping around her legs. She knelt, pulling them close, burying her face in their soft hair. The scent of sunshine and innocence filled her senses, a balm to the lingering wounds of her past. This was her true life. A life she had carved out of the wreckage, a life she would protect with every fiber of her being. Later that evening, as the city lights twinkled outside her window, she sat across from Song-yi, a comfortable silence settling between them. He watched her, his gaze steady, unwavering, holding a depth of understanding that she had never known before. He hadn't pressed her, hadn't demanded explanations, simply offered his quiet support, a solid presence in her newly constructed world. He raised his glass, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice a low rumble. She met his gaze, a warmth spreading through her chest, chasing away the last vestiges of the chill that had clung to her for so long. "To new beginnings," she echoed, her voice clear, steady, infused with a newfound strength. The past, with its tangled web of deceit and suffocating expectations, felt like a distant dream. The news had reached her, filtered through carefully constructed channels, of Chi-Mo's public apology, his desperate attempts to salvage his reputation, his pleas for her return. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. An apology after all this? She thought, the irony stinging. "I won't give a cent for such an apology," she murmured, the words barely audible, yet filled with a quiet conviction. Song-yi's hand covered hers, his touch warm, reassuring. He didn't need an explanation. He understood. "I am so happy," she whispered, the words catching in her throat, thick with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of relief, of release, of pure, unadulterated joy. From now on, there will be no more envy for a wife in this world. She looked at Song-yi, truly looked at him, and saw not a savior, but a partner, a companion, a man who saw her, not the gilded cage she had inhabited, but the woman she truly was. The woman she was finally becoming. The future stretched before her, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with the vibrant colors of her new life. And for the first time in a long time, Xia Weiqi, the woman who had once been a ghost in her own life, felt truly, irrevocably free. The Parisian air, infused with the promise of a new dawn, filled her lungs, a breath of life in a world reborn. The scent of lilies, heavy and cloying, permeated the funeral parlor. Chi-Mo stood stiffly, his face a mask of grief, or perhaps, confusion. He hadn't truly grasped it yet, this emptiness that yawned beside him where Weiqi should have been. He glanced at the portrait, her serene smile a stark contrast to the hollow ache in his chest. "She's really gone," a voice whispered in his mind, a voice he'd stubbornly ignored for years. The years he'd spent lost in the fleeting comfort of Ching's manufactured adoration. Was I blind? Deaf? How could I not see her slipping away? Ching stood just behind him, a study in somber elegance. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, a possessive gesture that felt strangely hollow. Inwardly, a thrill of victory coursed through her. Finally, she thought, mine. But even in this moment of triumph, a sliver of unease pricked at her. Chi Mo's grief, though muted, felt genuine. A disconcerting thought flickered through her mind. Had he actually loved her? News of Xie Weiqi's tragic boating accident spread like wildfire. Company whispers painted her as a fragile soul, unable to bear the weight of the world. Chi Mo, the grieving husband, became a figure of sympathy. Ching, ever the supportive partner, was lauded for her grace and strength. The carefully constructed narrative played out flawlessly. Weeks turned into months. Chi Mo found himself increasingly irritated by Ching's constant presence. Her solicitousness, once a balm, now felt suffocating. He saw Weiqi in every corner of their home, in the quiet spaces she used to occupy, in the faint scent of jasmine that lingered in her closet. He began to remember the small things, the way she'd hum softly while tending her orchids, the gentle curve of her smile when their children rushed to greet her. Memories he'd buried beneath layers of indifference now resurfaced, sharp and painful. Meanwhile, on a sun-drenched beach thousands of miles away, Xie Weiqi laughed, the sound free and untainted by the shadows of her past. Her children built sandcastles, their joyous shrieks echoing against the rhythmic crash of waves. Beside her, Song Yi watched, his gaze warm and protective. He picked up her youngest, nuzzling the child's soft cheek. "Mama looks happy, doesn't she?" he murmured. The child giggled, reaching out chubby fingers to touch Weiqi's face. Weiqi's heart swelled with a love she'd never known existed, a love that had nothing to do with obligation or societal expectations. This, she realized, was what it meant to be truly alive. Ching's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Chi Mo's increasing withdrawal, his haunted eyes that seemed to search for something she couldn't provide, chipped away at her confidence. The whispers started, subtle at first, then growing louder, questioning her role in Weiqi's demise. Suspicion, like a venomous vine, wrapped itself around her, choking the life out of her carefully cultivated image. One crisp autumn afternoon, Chi Mo received an anonymous package. Inside, a single photograph. Weiqi, vibrant and alive, stood hand in hand with Song Yi, their children playing at their feet. The world tilted on its axis. He saw the truth, stark and undeniable. He'd been a fool, a pawn in a game he hadn't even realized he was playing. The grief he'd felt for Weiqi morphed into a searing regret, a burning shame for his blindness. He found her, not through investigation or pursuit, but by a strange twist of fate, a chance encounter in a bustling city square halfway across the world. She looked up, their eyes locking across the crowded space. Time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to just the two of them. Her surprise quickly gave way to a quiet strength, a calm acceptance. He approached her slowly, his heart pounding against his ribs. "Weiqi," he breathed, the name a plea. She simply nodded, her gaze unwavering. He saw it then, the unwavering resolve in her eyes, the quiet strength that he'd mistaken for weakness. Beside her, Song Yi stood tall, his presence a silent challenge. Chi Mo's carefully constructed world shattered into a million pieces. A small hand slipped into Weiqi's. Her eldest child, looking at her with unwavering trust. "Mama, are you going to marry Mr. Song Yi?" The question, innocent and pure, pierced through the tension. Weiqi looked at Song Yi, a soft smile gracing her lips. "I do," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I love you." The words hit Chi Mo like a physical blow. He opened his mouth to speak, to protest, to plead, but the words caught in his throat. "I object," he finally managed, the words weak and hollow even to his own ears. But it was too late. The damage was done. He'd lost her. He'd lost them all. Weiqi looked at him, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Pity? Perhaps. Or maybe, just maybe, a hint of the love that had once been. Then, she turned away, her hand firmly clasped in Song Yi's, and walked towards a future he was no longer a part of. The setting sun cast long shadows behind them, a stark reminder of everything he had lost. Sunlight, filtered through the sheer curtains, painted shifting patterns on the hardwood floor. Xia Weiqi watched the dust motes dance in the golden rays, a small smile playing on her lips. The scent of jasmine tea drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the faint, sweet aroma of Song Yi's aftershave. It was a simple, domestic scene, yet it filled her with a profound sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't realized she craved until she finally found it. This life, this quiet contentment, had felt like an impossible dream for so long. A childish giggle echoed from the garden, followed by the thud of a small ball against the wall. Her children. Free from the stifling atmosphere of their previous life, they blossomed under the warmth of Song Yi's affection. He wasn't just a father figure, he was their father, in every way that mattered. The thought warmed her from the inside out, a stark contrast to the icy hollowness that had become her constant companion during her marriage to Chi-Mo. "Mama, look." A small voice called, and a little girl, her face flushed with exertion, burst through the French doors, a bright red ball clutched in her hand. Xia Weiqi chuckled, scooping her daughter into a hug. The child's hair smelled of sunshine and fresh air, a scent that anchored her to the present, a tangible reminder of the life she had fought so hard to create. Had it really only been a few years since that meticulously planned escape? It felt like a lifetime ago, the memories of that suffocating existence fading like watercolors left in the rain. What a powerful kick! Xia Weiqi exclaimed, nuzzling her daughter's cheek. The little girl beamed, her eyes shining with pride. Xia Weiqi's heart ached with a fierce, protective love. This was what she had been fighting for. This simple, unadulterated joy. "Careful now, little firecracker," a deep voice chuckled from the doorway. Song Yi stood there, his tall frame filling the space, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled at them. He held 2 steaming mugs of tea, one of which he offered to Xia Weiqi. She took it, her fingers brushing against his. The warmth of his touch sent a familiar ripple of contentment through her. He had become her anchor, her safe harbor in the storm that had been her life. "I wanted to live like this many years ago," he murmured, his gaze meeting hers. "Leisure afternoon, next to me is my beloved girl." He paused, his eyes drifting to their daughter, who was now attempting to juggle the red ball with an orange one. "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy," she chanted, her small hands fumbling with the balls. Song Yi laughed, the sound rich and warm, and Xia Weiqi felt her heart swell with an emotion so intense it almost brought tears to her eyes. This was her happiness. Hard-won, fiercely protected, and infinitely precious. She sipped her tea, the jasmine fragrance filling her senses, and watched as Song Yi joined their daughter in the garden. He effortlessly scooped her up, tossing her into the air, her delighted squeals echoing through the afternoon. Xia Weiqi closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the sounds, the smells, the feeling of utter contentment that enveloped her. The ghost of Chi-Mo's presence, once so pervasive, had finally faded. The memories of his cold indifference, Ching's sharp, calculating eyes, the suffocating weight of societal expectations, they were like echoes in a distant room, barely audible over the vibrant symphony of her new life. She wondered if Chi-Mo ever discovered the truth, if he ever realized the extent of her unhappiness. But the thought barely registered, a fleeting ripple in the vast ocean of her current peace. She had left that life behind, trading gilded cages for open skies. Her aunt, the mastermind behind the escape plan, had called it a rebirth. At the time, Xia Weiqi had been too consumed by fear and uncertainty to fully grasp the meaning. Now, watching Song Yi patiently teach their daughter how to properly throw a ball, she understood. She had shed the skin of a woman trapped in a loveless, suffocating marriage and emerged as someone new, someone stronger, someone truly free. The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden, bathing everything in a warm, golden light. As Song Yi carried their sleepy daughter back inside, Xia Weiqi rose to meet them, a quiet smile gracing her lips. This was her family. This was her home. This was her life. And it was perfect. The whispers of the past held no power over her anymore. She had found her happiness, and she would guard it with every fiber of her being. The charade of death, the elaborate plan, the fear and uncertainty, it had all been worth it. She had traded a life of quiet desperation for a future filled with love, laughter, and the simple joy of being alive. And in that trade, she had found herself.